Here we go. Can you see my presentation? Good, lovely. Hold on, just need to start this here and then we go. Good. I'd like to start with one thing. This is my hello, and then I'd like to give you a short introduction into the Aktionsnetzwerk Nachhaltigkeit, the thing I am leading since late September last year, so to say. I'd like to get a short idea, who are you? And I'm going to ask you three little questions, which hopefully will help me to frame what I'm about to say. So I have a presentation, but I'm very happy to react to your question. What is it I'm going to talk about? I'm going to talk about sustainability in the cultural sector from a very general point of view, because I understand this being the first of a series of webinars in your project. I try to really get some height of flight, so to say, or create some long horizon view on the issue itself, because I think it really helps before deep diving into the practical issues, have a common joint understanding what sustainability is in general, because sustainability is one of the words which is very, very often used by very, very many people with very, very many different meanings. So, and I'd like to end with something together. So let's do something together. This is the things I'm going to talk about. The Aktionsnetzwerk Nachhaltigkeit in Kultur und Medien is something I started late autumn, but before that, for more than 10 years, I was doing sustainability in the cultural sector. So I started the Green Music Initiative 10 years ago. Green Music Initiative is Europe's biggest research and innovation network for festivals. We're doing many European projects in the field of energy production, circular economy, mobility, and we have more than 150 festivals in our network. This is one of a look at some of the projects I've been doing in the last 10 to 12 years. We were working for the Eurovision Song Contest, did an energy project at Glastonbury Festival, doing something, a research project with Roskilde Festival in Denmark, working for Documenta, which is Europe's biggest art fair, have a project with Theatertreffen in Germany, and where we set up the basic structure for a climate accounting structure for them. They're doing a CO2 carbon accounting program. We are engaged in the renovation process of the Gropiusbau in Berlin, which is a beautiful museum. And the idea is how to create a sustainable future for that lovely place. But we have very commercial projects as well. The Mercedes-Benz Arena is a very big arena in the middle of Berlin. And an actual project, we are working with the Fête de la Musique. This is an European project. We are working for the German part of it, the Berlin part. Fête de la Musique, some might know it. In Berlin, it's more than 160 different event partners for one day coming outside in times of not the pandemic, coming outside and doing music. And we created a green deal with the government of Berlin and the Fête de la Musique. They wanted to move towards climate neutrality by 2030, and we're creating that process. Today, I'm going to talk mostly from the viewpoint of Aktionsnetzwerk Nachhaltigkeit, which is set up by the German government. So the German government approached us and said, obviously, in the creative sector, in the musical sector, there has been so much already happening in the fields of sustainability and innovation. Can't we move that understanding to the broader scope of the cultural sector? And by broader scope, I mean that project has been funded by the government. So we are mostly aiming on the, I would say, big ships. And this is the look on the project partners, where you see Documenta, but we have cities as well. Julie's Bicycle from the UK is a partner, but so is the Berlinale and the Gropiusbau. So it's a very broad spectrum of partners coming together in that network. And the special thing about that network is it is an action network. So all partners join. I sometimes call them the club of the willing, the coalition of the willing. So they join together to create actions. It's not another network. It's not another talking club. It's not another offer for workshops. So actually we're coming together and getting things done. We have some clear targets, and this I haven't properly translated into English, I see. Well, obviously the main objective, the main mission of the network is to stay in the national government's climate targets, but not only these. Everything we do, every action should be along the line of the Paris Agreement. So it's called PAC, Paris Agreement compatible, you know that. So we're trying to keep our activities aimed at staying below 1.5 degrees. And as well, we are working along the lines of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Everything sounds very complicated, but we can really boil it down into one number. And this is until 2030, we have to reach a clear target. This is not only a German target, this is a European target. And some member states like the UK have already lowered their target, so they want to go there quicker. But we, and by we mean everything, every country, every pupil, every theater, every car manufacturing company, we all have to have reduced our emissions by at least 55% by 2030. 2030 is a mere 10 years from now. It's not much time, but I think we can reach it. And to get there for the next 45 minutes or so, I'd like to offer you and encourage you to really open your mind and open yourself up to some emotions, I would say. When the thing works out, what I've planned so far, there will be disappointment. There will be disappointment with you, and I'm happy to disappoint you, because I think by disappointment, I mean, let's shatter some of the myth. Let's get one of the elephant out of the rooms. Let's have a close look on the actual reality. Let's disappoint our narratives, right? Because by disappointing your narrative, you're opening up. Then I'm offer you a surprise. There will be surprising moments, hopefully, in which you hopefully will think, oh, I never thought like that before. That's interesting. Then there will be moments in which I will ask you for a decision. I will definitely ask you for a decision. So this is a presentation, this is a speech, but there will be moments in which I will look at you, dear participants, and say, now is the moment to decide. What is your decision? And at best, it will be fun. So taking all that 3 or 4 things together, this will be our 45 minutes plus or minus. And after that, we'll have lots of time to discuss. We can discuss in between if you think something needs to be addressed. As of now, like we said, raise your hand. So I'd start with the first question. And I just would love to have only 3 very, very, very short impulses. So what is your most pressing issue in the field of sustainability as of today? What is your most painful challenge right now? Why are you here? Why did you think it makes sense listening to that bald guy from Berlin? What brought you here? What is really keeping you awake at night? Very short. Who's up for raising their hands and their voices? You can do it easily by just unmuting your microphone, and then everybody can hear you, including me. So, dear audience, yes, Helene, please. Very short. What's keeping you awake at night?
Feeling like overwhelmed with the extreme reality of climate change, and like not knowing what my role as either an individual or an organization can be in that, or my small role in it.
Thank you very much. So the feeling of getting overwhelmed without having the measures or leverages to actually make a difference. Okay, thank you. Carolina.
Yeah, also this overwhelming feeling leading to disempowerment of not knowing where to start, and feeling that is so big that you have to do so many things at once and you can't prioritize.
Okay, once you're starting to understand the sheer scope of the challenge, you're tending to lose sight of the actual next steps, because everything becomes important.
Yeah.
And you don't know where to start, and wherever you start, it seems not to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
Good, yeah. So audience, I need another third impulse, then we can run through. Steffi Haber, please.
I just feel a great responsibility, and I feel that this responsibility is even bigger in the context with our company and the company that I work for. And this is basically pressuring me to be part of a change and to make a change, even if it starts with baby steps.
Okay, good. So the responsibility to actually start doing something. You're feeling a pressure on yourself and your activities. There was one person more. Was it Marty Ken? No? Or was it just, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I
Please.
could. Yeah. Uh, well, what I've been thinking, it's much like on sustainability on art field is more like what is the sustainability in in cultural institutions when it's time to die in a way? What is the purpose of the old versions which are coming from the 70s, which are not, the purpose has changed so much. And like in Finland, we have the city theater system, which basically takes all the.
Now you're can you say the last sentence again? You were frozen.
Yeah, basically the money goes to the city theaters, and at the moment, and it's not for the, for example, not the artists who are working on this time. So I wonder how that sustainability is solved in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Why we are keeping alive those monsters, basically, which are like 50 years old.
It's a very important topic, yeah. So with all the new things hopefully coming, old things have to go, and who's going to make that very decision? Thank you very much. Very important question. So Lena, and then.
Yeah, I was just wondering myself how we can really start also not with the small steps, but also with the big steps, and how we can facilitate the exchange between the different institutions and also individuals.
Okay, so the question is how to create a structured approach towards that. So don't start too big, but don't start too small as well. And what is the I would say the sweet spot for your very activity, right? Okay, good. So this is what I wrote down, and I'm hopefully can work along the lines. So talking about the feeling of getting overwhelmed and small in the wake of that very challenging situation, the experience of disempowerment and too much at stake and too little measures, too little leverages. The pressure which comes from the feeling of the responsibility, the, I would say, awkward and very not so nice situation where you have to decide what is going to die, what is needing to die, or are we keeping the right things alive, and how to create a structured approach, looking at big steps, small steps, and how to really put them on different people's shoulders and not only on one person. Yeah, good. Lovely. That helps me a lot because we can always go back to your questions. Okay, so now let's start with something, and I would very much encourage you to kind of buckle up now because it's going to be a ride. And but this is the idea of it. The ride will be really bumpy at times, but I'm going to push through some of the myths regarding sustainability, some of the narratives, some of the stories we tell ourselves, and it helps so much to really get aware of the stories, and some stories actually we need to get rid of, at least from my point of view. So let's start with the myth. One of the biggest myths, and we see that right now, and you hear that on a regular basis, people tend to say crisis means chance. There's a big chance in crisis, and I would challenge that. There is no chance in crisis. Sometimes people in speeches say the Chinese sign for crisis means chance, which is not true, but it rings so well with people because we have the tendency of thinking of if things are really bad, then something good should come out. And I think we are on a wrong track here. I mean, the word crisis itself is coming from the world of medicine, from the world of doctors, and the crisis there means a very short moment in time in which the body decides, and now I'm already on Marty Kanen's topic, in which the body decides if I'm going to die, if I'm going to survive. So the crisis is a very short moment, a very short moment. A crisis can't stay too long. And because we pretend everything is a crisis, we take ourselves out and we don't really move into the field of decision, because a crisis is asking for a decision. A crisis is asking for a decision. How are we going to move into the future? What kind of future we want to build? Are we going to survive or not? This is the main core of a crisis. So at the very idea of that, when you think of that, you are coming into the picture. It's not only the crisis, it's a moment of decision. So right now, with the pandemic, it's just a tiny look on the whole structure of a crisis. And the climate crisis will have an even bigger ask of us. And wherever you look, we tend to call everything crisis. We have the climate crisis, we have the crisis of democracy, we have the crisis of education, we have the crisis of the social system, blah, 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 blah. And every of these crises is asking for a decision. So let's keep that in mind. This is the first moment I'm going to ask you what your decision is, and you can keep that in the back of your mind. I'm going to ask you over and over again. The next thing, and this is sounds a bit weird, but no culture is not sustainable. Very often when I do speeches and I say, okay, we have to reduce our emissions by at least a half, then they say, okay, does that mean we can't tour anymore? Or as a theater, should we just cut our productions in half and just have half the number of productions? Or as an artist, should I only produce half of the pictures? Or should we have movies only 45 minutes instead of 90 minutes? So this is actually the wrong number. So the first reaction always is, and this comes with the responsibility feeling and the feeling of pressure, that the answer can be, oh, if I have to reduce by 50%, I cut it in half. But this is wrong. If we would do that, we wouldn't save the climate. We wouldn't even lower our emissions. So let's not think that just by reducing culture, we could reach these targets, because no culture is not sustainable. Then that brings me to the next thing. Sustainable culture is normal culture. Let's look at it that way. I'm kind of bored because I'm doing that for such a long time that we call it green. Why is responsible touring called green touring? Why isn't not responsible touring called bad touring? Why do theaters say, okay, we are a green theater, this is our green rider? Why isn't that normal? This should be the situation we should be aiming for. Sustainable culture should be normal culture. And then I make it even more complicated. Sustainability is the wrong word. Why is sustainability the wrong word? Do we have musicians here in the audience? Do we have a guitar player in the audience? Has ever anybody of you watched a guitar player with the band tapping there is an effect, it's called sustain. And if you hit it, what does it do? Can you imagine? Sustain. It sustains the sound into the future. So if you have the effect pedal called sustain and you go ding, it goes ding very long into the future. It's a nice effect if you're not such a good if you're not such a good guitar player, because it sounds very beautiful. But sustainability is about the only looking at the term is about creating something which really rings into the future, which is nice. But on the other hand, and again, you were already addressing that, shouldn't we transform the system? Is this the system of culture we actually want to transform into the future? Is that the last step in the development of the cultural sector, which should withstand every development in society and should prolong its whatever into the future? Is that what we want, or do we need to transform it? Was the cultural sector before the pandemic a comfort zone? Was it something which catered for the people, which catered for the planet, which catered for societies in the best of possible ways, or was it already weird, so to say? Let's not pretend before the pandemic it was okay, because if we would do that, then we would move into the fields where we just set up everything again. And this is wrong. I would rather go for something like that. This is a campaign of the Green Music Initiative. It says harder, faster, greener, please. Because we're talking to a sector, the cultural sector, and I'm coming from the musical sector, which is about an enormous amount of stimuli and a feeling of abundance, a feeling of not having any borders. And this is what the cultural sector is about. The cultural sector is about tapping into an infinite source. If you are working with creativity, you have access to an infinite source. So let's make it bigger and better and bolder and more beautiful and more colorful and more, but with less emissions and with less negative impact. This would be my definition of sustainability. My definition would never be let's have that sound into the future as long as possible, but transform what we have now and make it bigger and better, but, and this is interesting, but with less impact. So more with less, which is weird, but it can be done. One thing we shouldn't forget, everybody's talking about the footprint right now. Yeah, so you have to do your footprint of your production, you have to do your footprint of your theater, you have to do climate accounting, and this is good. It is very good because it gives you a basic understanding where you're at. On the other hand, let's not forget that there is something like a handprint. Yeah, a handprint is a concept of a positive impact. A positive impact is something you, with your cultural production, have on your audience, on the lives of your audience, on the social structures of your audience, the people you're working with, the service providers you're engaging with. So let's not think that cultural production has only a footprint. And you're right, the footprint has to be reduced. We have to reduce our footprint. At the very same time, we have to maximize our handprint. And only if we get that together, it makes sense. Because if you're only looking on the footprint, the answer, let's just cut our production in half, is a feasible answer. If you're looking at both, the answer will be no, we have to rethink the way we're doing things. And in that regard, I would very much talk about transformation instead of sustainability. So what is the transformation we are in right now? The transformation of the system. And the good news, and this can really put you at ease a bit more, is transformation is happening everywhere. It's not only the cultural sector. Everything, everywhere is transforming right now. And it has been for 300,000 years since mankind, or whatever you want to call mankind, started here on that planet. We have been transforming the way we're doing things. We've been transforming the way we were dressing, eating, doing cultural activities. This has been transforming for 300 years, 300,000 years. So it would be weird to stop right now. Why not tap into that flow again? Let's talk about transformation. And it's not only you talking about transformation. This is a project by the European Commission. I've been engaged in the last 6 months. I think some of you might have been attending as well. It was called Voices of Culture and funded by the European Commission. The idea was to understand how the cultural sector could find its role in the sustainable development goals. It was a very technical approach, and in the end of that approach, we as the participants were asked to come up with recommendations towards the European Commission, recommendations to help the European Commission to understand the role of the culture, because this is new, because I'm in that field for, I would say, 10, 12 years now. And for the very first time in the last 2 years, I had a feeling that on a level of the European Commission, where I'm doing very often business, there was a tendency to understand the role of the culture, to understand the role of the culture in their transformational processes. And in that recommendations we were giving to the European Commission, there was number 5. And in that recommendation, we said culture needs to be not only seen but established as the fourth pillar of sustainability. This everybody will net now. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, why not? But the interesting thing about that, once culture would be acknowledged or recognized as being the fourth pillar of sustainability, with the others being the ecology, economy, and the social stuff, and culture being the fourth pillar of it, that would mean culture would have a much stronger role in all of the European funding processes. Because as of now, and this is the biggest challenge I see from my point of view, most of the sustainability, or I want to call it transformation activities, are funded from the creative funds. Creative Europe and so on, Music Moves Europe, Theater Moves Europe, all these creative funds. But the creative funds are less than a 20th of the other funds. So that money, these budgets needs to come from the other European funds. They are Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, a few billion euros are in these funds. And once culture would be recognized as that fourth pillar, culture would be applicable to these funds. Right now, this is the biggest challenge, because we have intrinsic motivated actors doing interesting stuff, but with very little access to funds. Important. And not only this is already some of the projects coming out of the ground. The new European Bauhaus, for the very first time, and this is a European project, not coming from the creative industry, not coming from Creative Europe. This is a project of Ursula von der Leyen. So she's the presidency. It's a presidency project. And now what you say, what's so interesting about that project? If you read the subline, new European Bauhaus, there it says beautiful, sustainable, together. So for the very first time in a European top-level program, it says beautiful. And for somebody coming from the cultural sector like you would say, well, beautiful is a word I'm using on a regular basis. But for a politician, having a project taglined beautiful, sustainable, together is such a move into a new direction. Something is happening there. So let's now move into the actual doing of things, because you were asking me how to understand the big measures, the small measures, where I am, where to put the leverage, where to start, where to stop. And I would like to start with a very pressing question, a very hard question. Because I hear it all over when I say we have to reduce our emissions by 55%, and I ask everybody in the room, has any of you any idea what your emissions are as of today? So you have to lower your emission in the next 10 years by 55%. Where are you today? How much? And it's a bit like that. No, this is me. This is the way I feel. You know, I'm in the pandemic, I gained some weight. At least my wife told me. I gained some weight, and I think some of us gained some weight because I had to stay home, and we're eating very often very good because I love to cook. And sometimes I feel like that orangutan. I have the feeling I'm somehow too fat, too big. And this is the first reaction everybody has when I ask them how much. When I ask them, what is your emission? What is your footprint? Everybody says, most of them say, I don't know. And then I have the feeling it's too big. And this is actually the same. If you ask somebody, how much is your weight? Then everybody will say, oh, I feel a bit too, I could lose some weight. And why don't we just look a bit closer? Because it feels weird that everybody feels they're too fat, including me, without actually knowing. I don't have a scale at home. I just threw it out, because it made me feel bad in the morning. So I just threw it out. Now I have the weight I love. And the interesting thing is, whenever I ask how much is too much, then they say, well, obviously I don't know. And this comes from the pressure. And you talked that you had that in the impulses in the beginning. Everybody feels that pressure. We feel the pressure of being too fat because the magazines tell us. We feel the pressure of our cultural activities having a far too big footprint because we tend to think that, but we don't know how big it is actually. So we think it's too big. And this puts us in a box because nobody talks to nobody. We're afraid. The pressure is mounting, 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 and so on. But what you measure, you will manage. So you have to know where you are. The good thing is it's not only you measuring that. So all the industrial nations are measuring their footprints. And there you can see, good news, the footprint from 1990 to 2020 has already reduced by 37%. So without doing nothing, all of you have already reduced your footprint more than 37%. Because sometimes when you read, I have to reduce my footprint by 55%, you tend to think, it's only me, blah, oh my God, how can I make it? The only way is that I cut my production into half. But here you can see, blue is energy. Light green is mobility. So in the last 10 to 15 years, the energy footprint has more than halved itself already. And the mobility footprint, not so much, but still a bit. And once we move the mobility from fossil fuels to electricity, the mobility footprint goes down as well. Why I'm showing you this? It means that your production already, you are gaining from the reduction on other parts of the sector. So when you buy energy for your theater, the energy footprint in the last 30 years has halved already. Without changing anything in your operations, your footprint has already halved from an energy point of view. That doesn't mean that you can say, I'm not doing nothing, but I want to tell you that it's doable. So what you measure, you will manage. Where do you start? This is something we were asking festivals what their energy consumption was. These are, I don't know, 25 festivals from Germany, and interesting. They have a very, very different energy consumption per visitor day. So we broke it down to visitor day because in the first step we were asking for the consumption. Then we understood, oh, you can't compare these. Then we said maybe we can compare these on a day, like visitor day. But still, you see there are festivals which have less than a fourth of the bigger ones of the energy consumption. Does that mean that the festivals on the right side are bad festivals? Or the festivals on the left side are good festivals? No, it means they are different. So this is what I want to say. Don't feel too fat. Don't be afraid to talk about your footprint. It's not that you will be compared to another theater because you can't compare. You can compare only apples with apples. You can't compare apples with olives or oranges or bananas, even if they're all edible. You can't compare one theater to the other once they are all the same. So it helps so much to understand where you are, even if it's not comparable, because you want to lower your footprint, not the footprint of your competitor. But there are festivals not only looking at that. This is a theater from Germany, and they did a footprint with the Julie's bicycle tool. And interestingly, what do you see here in that footprint? What is the most, what springs to your eye very first? Little question. Somebody. What's the biggest? It's in German. Okay. But some might understand a bit of German. So the German-speaking audience, Wolfgang, for example, what springs to your eyes in that emission of the Musiktheater Gelsenkirchen in the year 2019-20? What do you see?
That Strom, power, energy consumption is the biggest, almost 3/4 of the overall CO2 emission.
Exactly. And the interesting thing, because when they did send me that thing, I was calling them, oh, I never seen such a thing. And then they said, yes, it is because it is looking at 2019-20 days, years. So there was no production from the beginning of 2020 on, but the energy was still running. This is why the audience mobility is so low. Usually the audience mobility would be much bigger, which would then change the overall allocation. Usually audience mobility is up to 60% or even more of the footprint of a theater, if you take it into account. If you look here, This is the carbon footprint of a tour from the band Coldplay. You might have read about Coldplay announcing they will stop touring until they understand how these tours could be done in a climate-friendly way. And here you see something which really makes sense. You have audience travel with 33%, and you have venues then 34%, which then is energy at the venues they were playing. And then the interesting thing is, the bigger the venues, the lower the energy of the venues came based on an audience day. So coming from a climate point of view, the best thing for a band is to play in the stadium, because you can get 30, 40, 50,000 people in, and the energy emissions are roughly the same if you would play 10 venues with 15,000 people. So does that mean that we can only do stadium tours anymore? I don't know, but it helps you to understand, to see where you're at. Now I'm moving to another interesting thing, because some people say, okay, good, we understand. Is digital the new way? Is digital the future of the creative, of the cultural sector? And I would say no. Yeah, because we all know that we so much love our Zoom conferences because we can meet with people all over Europe. At the very same time, we tend to forget these digital tools come with a energy footprint. We don't see that. And what we see here is the two numbers compared. First is the plastic waste production of the US music industry. From 2000 to 2060, it really went down, I would say, down to a seventh or an eighth of it, because they are not selling CDs anymore. So if you would look only on the pile of waste, you would say, oh yes, the music industry is on the right track because they're not producing that much of waste anymore. But if you compare the numbers of the emissions of the industry, you see the emissions going up, actually. And these are only 2016 numbers. If you look on 2021 numbers, it would be even higher, because now you have to take into account all the streaming services, Spotify, iTunes, Deezer, blah, blah, you name them. So they got rid of the plastic. They're not producing CDs anymore. So you don't need to throw these away after 5 years. But at the very same time, digital produced a big footprint. I'm just showing you this to really give you an understanding. It's not only looking at the footprint. Good news is there are some activities. This is what's been done in the UK by the Arts Council, together with our partners, Julius Bicycle. They every year come up with an overall footprint of the sector, different parts, museum, theater, visual arts, and then you break it down into mobility and energy and so on. And they compare it on a year by year by year basis. And they are always using the same calculator, the Julius Bicycle calculator. So now when you're using the same calculator, all of a sudden things become comparable. And this is the good news, why we are translating Julius Bicycle's calculator into German right now, because we think it's the best one. It's the best one, it's the best to use. It has the best benchmarking data, because this is what you want. Remember the little orangutan, you feel too fat, and you don't feel too fat when you see, oh, there's an orangutan next to me who is even bigger than me. I might not be so fat. And Julius Bicycle already has 3,500 data sets, data points, and you can compare that. What is NPO? National Public Organizations. This is funded organization by the Arts Council. Yeah, this is also the Arts Council is only looking at the portfolio. Yeah, you write it. Good. Now there's another myth coming up, and this really brings me into the disempowerment story, so to say. I think the disempowerment thing is a real situation, because we tend to use terms and language parts of us don't believe in. One of that is climate neutral. Yeah, we say we have to become climate neutral by 2030. And everybody who has ever produced a cultural production knows it's not possible to produce culture without any emissions. But this is not the actual meaning of climate neutrality. Climate neutrality doesn't mean no emissions at all. It means emissions reduced to 80% of the actual status, because by 80%, the left or the 20% which stays, this is the amount which the planet is able to recollect, to rebind, so to say. And we have to keep that in mind, because the big fucker with climate neutrality is that people say, okay, I have to buy certificates, I have to buy compensation. And that's not true. I'm going to show you why. So the term we should use is net zero. Has any of you heard of the term net zero? Yeah, Luis, good. Some. So this is net zero. Net zero means we have to reduce our emissions. We have to find ways of carbon removals. Carbon removals is not carbon offsetting. Carbon removal means proven techniques to really get carbon out of the atmosphere and have it stored there. And we can use compensation. It's optional. Every tree you plant is a good tree, but don't think by planting trees you can reduce your footprint. Because the big challenge with trees is they are beautiful, but it takes 50 years for them to bind that carbon. And most of the trees, most of the planting schemes right now, even if they're done by the WWF or gold standard certificates, most of these schemes are based on cutting trees down, cutting old forest down, and then rebuilding it. Because an old forest in the carbon certification scheme has no price. And instead of cutting them down and then planting them again, we should save the trees which are already there, because they already have really removed carbon from the atmosphere. So this is why the whole certification thing is such a terrible situation, because it is good to plant trees, but please don't pretend you're carbon neutral. Yeah, and when it says SBTs, it means science-based targets, and interim because they are changing on a monthly basis. So if we transform our societies now, we have more time. The longer we wait, the steeper the curve needs to get. This is why it says interim science-based targets, but roughly what you say is we have to reduce our emissions down to 20%. This is what we tend to say climate neutral, but which is actually net zero, because the last 20% of emissions is what the planet can retake, can rebind, can remove. Yeah. So good thing, CO2 is not everything. This is important. Let's not pretend by only looking at CO2, the whole sustainability, whole transformation will be covered. But it's a good start. It's a good start because it's doable. We're talking about what are big steps, what are small steps, where to start. Where to start always is action speaks louder than words. If you are feeling disempowered, if you are feeling too much pressure on your back, if you have the feeling something needs to die, start with a very, very tiny step. And how could these steps then move to transformation? How could these tiny steps then become a transformational action, so to say? And what you will be confronted with is resistance everywhere. Yeah, so the first impression is the impression of being overwhelmed. Then you feel much pressure on your back, disempowered. And once you start, there will be resistance. I don't want to change. I can't change. It's expensive. It's impossible. It doesn't change anything. But let's have a closer look why that is. Why is resistance everywhere? First of all, we have to understand who are we talking to? Who are the counterparts, so to say? Because this is the interesting thing about transformation. Most of the people I talk to, and if I ask them what their position towards transformation is, and Carolina just attended a workshop yesterday, and she has to do some homework on that issue. What is your position in transformation? Very often people say, I would transform easily. I could transform easily, but X, Y, Z are the reasons why I can't, or they won't, or it's impossible that. So we have a feeling that we should be in the position to do it, but not the structure. So let's look on this is a very structural way of looking at transformation and sustainability. And the question is, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to as your counterpart in the system, in the theater, and in the funding society, and so on? Or who are you talking to within yourself? And you could either see sustainability on transformation as a problem like, oh, there are rules, there are costs associated with it. There's a big risk, the CO2 price will go up. Oh, this is a big risk of reputation, a big risk of relevance. Or you could look at it as a chance, a possibility, an opportunity. You could look at it, it's an innovation field. It could lead to cost reduction. It could become part of your strategy. Imagine that sustainability transformation could become part of your strategy and not only avoiding costs. It could become part of your strategy. It could really pay into your reputation. Like, imagine if that transformation is of such a societal scope that everybody would join it. What would happen if the cultural sector would say, okay, we're joining it as well, we are part of it? What would happen? Or let's look at it the other way around. What would happen if everybody would do it and society would not? So reputation is a thing. And then relevance. Relevance is such an utmost important topic to me, because I don't know how it is in your countries, but in Germany right now, even with us still being a rather rich country, there's a big discussion these days about the relevance of culture. A big discussion about nobody's really speaking that out, but I can feel it coming. Like, do we really need culture? Do we really need to pay so much for culture? Should culture be funded publicly when in the next 3 years after the pandemic, there will be so much pressure on public budgets? Do we need a theater in every city? Do we need to help authors write playwrights which will only be played to 150 people? All these questions are coming. And I would love to really safeguard the position of culture by really finding a voice in that societal challenge of transformation. Because this is one of the things I learned from my mentor. They said, you become relevant by being relevant. It's as easy as that. And you are not the one to decide if you're relevant. The others decide if you are. You can say, I'm relevant. I'm relevant. What would happen without me? They will say, yeah, let's see. So this is why I'm so much rallying for the role of the culture in that. Why I'm so much rallying for really speaking out and taking action. Because the next question we're all moving towards is that transformation, which has been happening for 300,000 years, will happen anyway. After the pandemic, there will be a new society. You can call it the new normal, the old normal with different color, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be different. And now is the moment to decide if we want that transition to be by design or by disaster. Do we want to design it? Are we seeing ourselves empowered enough to really grasp that moment and say, okay, it might feel a bit awkward because nobody asked me to do that, but I am going to take that role now and do a transformation by design towards a desired future, and not by looking at the future and being afraid, saying, this is not what I want, and I'm trying to make it a bit less interesting, so to say. How are you going to do that? I mean, you can wait until there are rules, then you're compliant. You can wait another 5 years, and then we have another 5 years until the 2030 target, and say, okay, if public body, the society thinks we are, as culture sector, if they think we are important, they will come to us. They will ask us. So you can wait another 5 years, and then once it becomes a rule, you can be compliant. You can be opportunistic. Yeah, opportunistic means you're looking if there are some opportunities here and there. You're doing what needs to be done, but not more. But if it's funded, you can do something and mingle your way through. You can do it tactical. Tactical means, okay, you have a clear target, but you need to react to what's happening because you don't feel yourself to be as strong enough to really push through. So you have a straight way, but you have to really move a bit here and there. And strategic or strategical means sustainability or the transformation is becoming part of your strategy. It's becoming part of your narrative. It's becoming part of the way you want to do things now and in the future. And then you take into account everything what's happening and you're ready to do that. The big challenge right now is that when you look at sustainability from a rather classical point of view, usually there are three, I would say, vectors. A vector has somebody of you studied physics in school? Okay, Carolina, you know, a vector is a power which works on a thing. So this is a vector and this is a vector. One goes there, and then they find a way. In sustainability, we tend to think there are only three vectors, three ways of looking at sustainability. First is efficiency. Efficiency is, can we make more of less? Yeah, an efficiency measure is, let's change your light bulbs so you're making more light with less energy. Super feasible, super makes so much sense. Good. That's efficiency. Let's make more of less. Efficiency still is in the capitalistic system of growth. We need to grow. And when we want to grow, we need to make more of less because this allows us to grow even more. Let's do efficiency. Then you can use sufficiency. Sufficiency means, do I really need it? Do I really need so much here? Sufficiency is a really bad thing for the system because if we all would look on the things we buy from a sufficiency point of view, I would ask myself, do I actually need another pullover only because it's getting thin here, or can I just put a patch on here like Brits people do? It looks very classy if you're using a leather patch. Or do I need a haircut, or I'm just going to shave? And this is the question. It really helps the system because we don't put too much pressure on the resources. We put much pressure on the capitalistic system because we don't buy so much, but we put less pressure on the resources. Sufficiency. There's another, the third one is called consistency. Has anybody of you an idea what consistency would mean in the topic of sustainability? Anybody? Somebody? Consistency? Donut economies, circular economies are consistent. Consistency means you want to keep a resource in a system, cradle to cradle. Let's not throw away stuff anymore. Whatever we need, whatever we use, after we used it, should be used again, either upcycled, recycled, blah, blah, blah. It's basically the idea of a circular economy. It means understanding that we have a given finite amount of resources, and whatever resource we need should be then put into a circular system. So these are the three vectors working in sustainability. Efficiency, very old, very neoliberal, getting more of less. Sufficiency, saying I don't need it, but still staying in the system. Creating a circular system means everything inside. But the big challenge is none of these really work with cultural actors. This is German, I'm going to translate it. So whenever I present these strategies to actors from the cultural sectors, they're not because they are smart and intelligent, yeah, I understand it, but somehow I have the feeling it doesn't ring with them. It doesn't go into their hearts. It doesn't resonate with them. And it really took me a few years to understand why that is. Why doesn't efficiency work with an artist? I mean, you can't approach an artist and say, be more efficient. Carolina, you are an artist. You painted 3 pictures. Be more efficient. Use less color. Paint more pictures. Doesn't work. Or you wouldn't, if Wolfgang, if you would be I don't know, a musician, and I would say, coming from a sufficiency point of view, do you really need to write another piece of music? Really? Is this what the world needs? So doesn't work. And consistency, again, kind of awkward. And the main reason for that is if you are an artist, if you are working in the cultural sector, if you're working in the, and this is an interesting term, if you're working in the creative industry is a new term and it's important because it tries to describe something, and sometimes I have the feeling we're not very aware of that. Creative industry means you're working with a resource which is creativity. The basic resource of the creative industry is creativity. Yes, you need some energy. Yes, you need some trees. Yes, you need some steel or alloy or whatever, but the basic resource the creative industry needs is creativity. Creativity itself is something they call in science a paradox resource. A paradox resource is a resource you have more of the more you use it. The more creative you are, the more you feel you have access to that resource. And this is why it feels weird if an artist is in the creative flow and you would go to her and say, be more efficient. You cut her off from her creative resource. And this is why the whole sustainability thing is a bit weird with the creative sector. So I would like to add a fourth pillar to that, and this is called resiliency. Resiliency means the understanding that you need to build a system which is resilient enough to react to what's happening to it. Right now, we see the creative sector is not resilient at all. Right now, the creative sector is lying on the ground. It has no ways of really doing what it needs to be doing because we can't show, we can't invite people, we can't meet, we can only do the digital stuff. We are not resilient. So if we would look at sustainability or transformation in the cultural sector, I would say let's move to resiliency. Let's move to a strength of a system which is able to react to whatever is happening. But how are we going to do that? So first of all, action. Angela Davis, I don't know, some of you might, Helen from GDR, yeah. She was big in the DDR, not so much in the West, unless you are raised with left intellectual parents, and then they said Angela Davis it is. But what I like about Angela Davis, besides that she really looks super cool, she coined the term, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change, I'm changing the things I cannot accept. And this brings me to the most important thing in the whole transformation, and this is self-empowerment. The only thing when you feel disempowered is self-empowerment. And it's as paradox as it sounds, nobody will ask you to empower yourself. And the feeling of pressure will only go away if you take it away. So you need to create that intentional moment of self-empowerment, that intentional moment saying, I want to transform the sector or my doing towards a more sustainable, resilient, desired way of doing things in the nearest future. You have to self-empower yourself. How are you going to do that? Important. And we had that in the beginning, no? The question of big versus small. I think Steffi raised it. Was it Steffi? I think so, yeah. Big goals, small steps. You have to have big goals. The better, the bolder. Yeah, but start with small steps. Because if this is the biggest challenge, and Carolina, you put it as well, like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. It's such a big scope. You have to have the big goal, and this is 55% at least, or already net zero by 2030. You have to have big goals, but you have to start with small steps. Next, find a common language. I showed you that the emission reductions are already on its way by different sectors, from the energy sector, from the mobility sector, from the real estate sector. So if you run a theater and your owner changes the insulation of the house, then you can lower your footprint. So, but you have to work together with them. And this is one of the biggest challenges for the cultural sector. We don't speak their languages and they don't speak ours. We don't understand each other. We tend to think we understand each other, but in the future we have to find a common language, because I learned that efficiency is the hardest thing to talk about to an artist. The other way, if you talk with a businessman, with an energy efficiency guy about creativity, they will go mad, because it afraids them. It afraids them in the very same way efficiency afraids some creative people. So we have to find a common language. We have to build bridges, and we have to go together. And by going together, I don't mean in the sector. And you said one of the impulses, but how can we build exchange networks? We have to build exchange networks, but with cross-sectoral partners. There is no need for another theater network. There is a need for a network in which a theater meets with a mobility provider. Let's not stay in our ghettos, so to say. And we are so used to talking the same language to the same people. We won't get the transformation started with only talking to the same people. We have to find a common language. We have to build bridges. We have to go together. And by going together, I mean cross-sectoral, other sectors. How are you going to do it? Bottom up and top down, very important. It has to come from the bottom. It has to go from the top. I don't mean it in a very hierarchical way, but there has to be an onboarding of every level of it, because most of the projects which are not working, I see they are either coming too much from the top or too much from the bottom, and not finding the bridges in between. You have to go step by step. Yeah, tiny steps, big goals, little steps, because self-empowerment is something which is a very, I don't know how to put it. The moment in which you empower yourself, two things are happening at the very same time. At an instant of a second, you're opening up to the sheer possibility of that transformation about to take place, which is like, wow. And a millisecond later, it goes, "Rah, I can't do that. I'm too little. I don't have the resources. I don't have the measures. I don't have this and that." So go step by step and create tiny, tiny moments of self-efficiency in which you realize you can actually do something. Please do it data-based, because it helps you. Data is the language of the business. Data is the language of reality. So is creativity, but data is the other language. Learn that language. And if you talk to a funder, say, we are going to reduce our footprint by 55%. We are at 120 now. We want to go to 87. And look, they go, wow, wow, this is my language. They're talking to me in my language. Learn that language and be co-creative. Find ways of working together with others. Find creative ways of doing that. Now I'm coming again to vectors. Like, these were the two, as I told you about, the four big ones: efficiency, sufficiency, consistency, and resiliency. And now I'm talking about how you're gonna decide what measures do make sense. And this was one of the other questions you were raising, like what are the right steps? And now right steps, when you're coming up with a possible measure, you want to look at it on its efficiency. Efficiency meaning, does it do its job? Does it do what it's supposed to do? Example, if you are running a theater and in your canteen you decide for going for paper cups on which people write their names so you don't have to throw away so many paper cups. This is a measure which is very visible, second, but the efficiency is kind of, but it feels very good because people see it. This is a measure, you want to look at it. It might be okay from an efficiency point of view, but it's very visible. Another way of looking is cost. How much does it cost? How much does it save me? How much I'm going to gain by putting that measure into place? Next way, speed. Speed. Time to market. Speed obviously is the key, because the quicker you are, the more time you have for the important things. And the important things, you want to do culture, you want to be creative. So try to not put too much time resources into sustainability, because still you are an artist, you are a production, you are producing a cultural product, and this is why you want to have time. So you might want to look at a measure which has a time to market which is quite quick. And then, and this is important, you want to look at it from a viewpoint of creativity and beauty. Does your measure have beauty in it? Is it something only the cultural sector can come up with it? Because this brings me to the most important thing. The role of the cultural sector is that the cultural sector itself has been dreaming, talking, singing, dancing, playing, shouting, crying about utopia and dystopia at the very same time. Whatever we see, whatever we listen to, is telling us a story about a future, a desired future, or a horrible future. Whatever we see, whatever we listen to, whatever we experience is telling us about the past, a past which was bad past or a good past. So this is what culture does. So every measure of culture in sustainability or transformation should ask itself, is it beautiful? Is it touching? Is it creative? Because you can't ask a solar field if it's beautiful. A solar field is very efficient, it's very cost conscious, it produces renewable energy. But is it beautiful? So let's put beauty back into the thing. And you remember the European project, the Bauhaus project, where it says beautiful for the very first time. And this is the role of the cultural sector. What resources do you need? You need knowledge, you need time, you need money, you need rules. Rules are super important. Carolina, we had it yesterday when we were talking about the 3 ways of transformation. Rules help so much because right now, most of the sustainability measures are done on a voluntary basis, intrinsic motivated without any money. And this is why most of the stuff is very, don't get me wrong, very weak. It is beautiful sometimes, it's creative, it's co-creative, but it's very weak because there's no access to money, there's no access to time, and the rules are not strong enough. Once there are rules in place, creativity usually explodes. This has been shown many, many times in science. With a proper rule set in place, creativity actually blooms. So many of the theaters, many of the companies, many of the festivals I've been working with say, Jacob, it's nice what we're doing here. It feels very interesting. It's good for us. But imagine what we could do if there are rules. So you need rules. You need data to understand the effect, the efficiency of your measures, and you need structure. What do I mean by structure? Structure means you have to understand what powers in your systems are able to provide these services. Don't think that it should be only you. This is the biggest failure I see with many of these voluntary sustainability working groups in institutions and houses. I mean, they do it intrinsically motivated. They are very passionate. They really want to do it. And then they even allowed to do it. They come to me, oh, we are allowed to start a sustainability working group now. I said, wow, are you paid? No, we can do it in our free time. I said, wow. So you need to have structure because most of you have proper day jobs. You're doing things. You can't just add sustainability. The way I can't. I mean, I'm doing so much. I can't just write a piece of literature in my free time. I would love to do so, but if I want to do it, I have to create a structure for that. Don't think it has to be you. Because we have to reach out to our funding bodies saying, okay, we want that, it needs to be done. If you want the cultural sector to take that role, then you need to help us as cultural actors. We are happy to put in our creativity, we're happy to put in our understanding of beauty, but we need knowledge, we need time, time is money, we need rules, we need data, we need structure. And that, this is important, shouldn't come from the cultural funding bodies. That money should come from the environmental ministry, from the Ministry for Economy, because they have these funds. The money is there. The cultural sector, as of today, doesn't ask loud enough. If we start asking, all these sustainability money we'll need from the cultural funds, which are already too small and which will be smaller in the future after pandemic, the whole thing will really go down the drain. So the clearer we identify these resources and the clearer we aim for funding bodies, and the sooner we do it, the quicker we'll get there. Last thing, transformation is a team sport. Big thing, very important. It sounds like everybody should know it, but I see too many lovely people getting burned out as activists. And I can't stress that often enough. The pressure you feel and the responsibility, and at the very same time, the scarcity of resources and the impossibility to step out once you see in the big picture can really grind you. And nobody, the world is not helped if you get burned out. So first and foremost, see it as a team sport. Do it together. Raise your voices, but really stay in contact with yourself, because the challenge seems to be unsolvable. Can we really remodel our system in a whole? And by system, I mean our society, our ways of doing business, the capitalistic system of endless growth. Can we remodel it? And it feels undoable. At the very same time, if there's a slight chance of actually making it happen, that very impulse can only come from the creative sector. Because the task now is to dream of something unthinkable. And this can only be done by the creative sector. So it is a team sport, but what the creative sector can deliver to that process is the most needed potion yet. Because we have all the science, we have all the technology, everything is there already. But we are lacking that one thing which the creative sector can bring into the discussion. And this is creativity, and this is the ability to dream of a future which is not written yet. So, and this is my last, no, my one before the last, but please, guys, do it with sprezzatura. Do you know sprezzatura? Anybody heard of the term sprezzatura? I love Italian language because it has some words we don't have in German. I wonder why we don't have sprezzatura in German. Sprezzatura means to give something complicated the feeling of being very easy, with a smile. And this, what I would love to see, because one of the biggest fuck ups in the whole sustainability transformation thing is that we tend to believe it's complicated. Because we tend to say it's undoable, it's unsolvable. And at the very moment, and this is about empowerment, at the very moment you decide to add a bit of sprezzatura, et voila, it becomes easy. And some would say, oh, this is a bit too much about positive thinking, blah, blah, blah. I would very much encourage you to keep the word sprezzatura in mind. And whenever something becomes very complicated in the future, think, what would be a sprezzatura way of pushing through? So what is your decision? Muhammad Ali, who I really love, said, if your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough. Steffi, so big versus small. Your dreams should be super big. Your steps can be small and dancey. Make your steps dance steps. Make transformation like a Roomba, one step forward, one to the side, one to the back, and easy in the hips, which for us German is undoable. We can't be easy in the hips. But make it like a dance, but your dreams should be super big. And if they don't scare you, they're not big enough. That's it. That was my intro into transformation. Let's talk. Hello. Very good. So, what a ride, huh?
Amazing. Thank you very much. We like to open up now for questions and comments and impressions. Please, if you do want to speak, perhaps raise your hand with a little raise hand or write it on the chat. I have to say, I very much like the sprezzatura, Jakob. I hadn't heard that before. It's really nice, very, very inspiring.
Jona wants to say something, but we need to allow her to do so.
Ah, right.
Maybe I should do it. Should I do it?
Yes, I think you can promote her from. Is that correct?
Let me see.
I don't.
Does it work now, Fiona?
You can.
Yes, I can.
You can promote somebody to panelist even though we've reached the limit. I don't think you can, Jakob.
I think we might be okay now. We have 16 panelists and 2 attendees. So.
Okay.
Fiona, I think you can speak now. She's gone. Where is she? Did I throw her out? No. There she is. No. Weird. She was there and raised her hand somehow, and no, she's.
Maybe she was waving goodbye.
Oh no. It can be. Okay, so if any of you, some of you want to speak, can we just unmute everyone?
Yeah, I think people can do it themselves as
Yeah.
like. I did have a question. If it's okay, I go first. Jakob, you spoke about like structure as a resource, I guess, to make transformation a successful one. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on like the usefulness of appointing someone in your team as a environmental coordinator, whatever the person with their main responsibility, or whether that environmental responsibility should be embedded in everyone's like job description within the team.
I have a very clear answer to that. The responsibility should be with everyone in the team. The responsibility for the action itself should be with one person. So the responsibility is I would say a basic DNA thing within that operation, but an action without an allocation to at least one person is just an idea, so to say. So, and if you want to just stay in the world of ideas, then the responsibility could be with everyone. Like we all feel very responsible, but if you want to put it into action, you should allocate it with people, at least one. Better would be a team.
Cool, thank you.
Claudius.
Jakob, thanks so much. It was super inspiring, very empowering. Thanks. Question, how big is the need, do you think, in the creative sector still for advice, consultancy, people like you, other people, what Carolina is learning right now? Is that still a gap that they want to change, or they want to use the creative?
Now you're stopped. Was it a question? You were just blocked. Could you say it again, please?
Was my internet on?
Okay.
Did you hear me?
I think I hope I heard the question, and I can answer it from, as of now, a German point of view. In Germany, there are 20,000 funded institutions by the federal governments, which is a bit like the Arts Council, so to say. 20,000 institutions. These are museums, theaters, libraries, and so on and so on. 20,000. If these, I need to go to the wall. Can you wait a second? Is that okay?
Tell us what you learned, Carolina, while we're waiting for Jakob to answer the door or whatever he's doing. It was a hot tip from yesterday.
Actually, one of the things that we talked a lot about yesterday was self-empowerment. So we thought a lot about our own motivations to do the training and to really understand in ourselves why we wanted to do this transformation training and to find the deeper reasons so that we can go through this process of self-empowerment. Just in a short sentence, it was 3.5 hours, so it would be very hard to.
Sorry.
Back.
Sorry, this was the Carrier, and I'm the only one here. Okay, in Germany, can I jump in? Is that okay? Okay, Claudius, in Germany, there are 20,000 funded organizations, and these are public funded. Not looking at the private now. If from these 20,000 in the next 5 years, I would say a fourth, that would mean 5,000 organizations would start these kind of processes, you can easily calculate the demand. So the answer is yes, the demand is much higher than you could ever imagine. All the public funded organizations will be asked to do an EMA certification in the next 5 years. So only looking at that, there is a market for, I would say, at least 5,000 transformation managers. Because, and this doesn't mean they have to come from outside of the sector, but that expertise should be either with people already in the sector or with external people being able to speak the language. Remember, it's about building bridges. They need to understand the culture production, and they need to understand energy efficiency as well. They need to be able to talk to the energy providing company, but need to be able to understand a director who wants to have a burning castle made out of light, I don't know. So this is a new job description. So there's a big market demand for exactly that kind of people. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, good.
I would have straight answer both one. I will ask later.
Tschüss, schönes Wochenende. Danke. Wolfgang.
Thank you again. It was inspiring a lot. I have two questions. One is basically, as someone who runs his own organization, I'm like, you spoke very much to my heart when you said about time and data and what can we do, and what are the rules. And we recently decided that we would basically set ourselves rules in terms of what are we doing and what are we prepared to pay for. Since we're not working with cultural funding, it is basically, yeah, just putting a number on like what does it cost to do what we do, but with a carbon neutral or as you said,
net zero
emission effect. And my interest is to basically, since we don't know what the others are doing, we would like to promote what we are doing in order to find a way that there is that rules become commonplace. And I think that's how things can change from the bottom up, as it were, is when you see what your neighbor is doing and suddenly it's like, it's not, because what I'm getting tired of is this thing of people saying like, we're all waiting for the others to do the right thing before we are doing it. But yeah, it's hard to figure it out what exactly how much is right and how to calculate it. There was not so much a question other than how can we find the others, like, or promote our rules in order to kind of, and the other question was, I was surprised about the badness of the Schädlichkeit of the virtual activities.
Mm-hmm.
And in my kind of practical head, I don't see kind of how powering up a computer or even a big server somewhere that helps connecting millions of computers, how that can be so damaging in terms of the carbon effect.
Well, I understand that you're surprised, because so was I when I learned these numbers. It's good that you're surprised, because this is what I was proposing. Be surprised. The big challenge with the digital world we're moving in is that we are kind of externalized the impact of our activities. And we had it already, like when we moved most of our production to China of stuff, so to say, all the emissions all of a sudden were occurring in China. And then international bodies said, oh, bad China, you're doing so much bad stuff. And then China said, but we are producing your phones. And with digital, it's even worse. Like when you bought a CD, I'm just using that example because it explains so much. Then you had it, and when it was bad, you just threw it away, and then you felt, oh, this is waste, this is plastic. Then when you have a computer, you don't see that anymore. But having all my music in the cloud means every time I listen to music, it's an upload and a download. Every time. That means worldwide server parks running on energy need to provide that service to me. The same goes for the digital stuff. I have a saying, when 60,000 people go to a festival and listen to music together, it's better from a climate impact point of view than 60,000 people listening together, no, listening alone to music at home on Spotify. It is. Because we don't see it occurring in one, we see it at a festival occurring in one place, and it looks very big. But in comparison to 60,000 people uploading, downloading, downstreaming, sharing videos, from home, it's roughly the same. It's even bigger at times. And you can look at it like there are very few surveys that, because the big companies are very reluctant on disclosing data. But the reality, I can send you, there's a Greenpeace study on that, and you can send you that. But the reality is the number of activities which produce an enormous energy footprint we don't see is growing. Video conferencing, streaming. I mean, just the difference between a normal video and a 4K video is I think it's 5 times the energy you need, because it's 5 times the data. And why you need a 4K video? Just because your mobile can do it, but everybody's just buying it. We're now buying towers with LTE or 5G. So this is growing. We don't see it. Fionnuala.
Thank you, Jakob, for a really interesting presentation. That's an amazing figure. I mean, I find that really hard to get my head around. You saying every time I listen to, or I even upload an album to Spotify account, this is using power somewhere?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is when you first, let's look at it that way. Like, if you, okay, this is a question. How many of you still have a record player?
Well, we have a record player, yeah.
When did you buy your record player?
Years ago.
Years ago, exactly.
Yeah.
How many of you have a CD player? When was the last time you bought a CD player? 3-5 years ago. So if you look on a record and a CD, how long does a record last? How long does a CD last? I have to throw away my CDs after 5 to 10 years because they skip and they sit. Okay, this is easily understandable. Now we used to download music on our MP3 players. So when you download the music, you have a downstream and it's on your device. And every time you listen to it, it's only the energy of the device needed, because there's no data. Then we moved from MP3 players to mobiles, to telephones. Usually every 9 to 12 months you get a new phone. This is usually what you do. but you don't have the music on your phone. So every time you listen to a track on Spotify, it says deliver the track and it streams it to your thing, but it's not stored here. You just listen to it and then it's going back. And the same goes with video. If you're looking at a video or an Instagram is the worst. If you look on an Instagram story, it's not stored on your mobile. It's just a 20 Mbit thing streamed.
Wow.
So if you downloaded a music track on your MP3 player, it's 3 Mbit, but you had it there forever. And you could listen to it 10,000 times. It's only the energy of the thing. If you stream it, every time you stream it, it's 10 Mbit, and this is just data, and data means energy.
Thank you.
Well, this is obviously the biggest elephant in the room. Nobody wants to look at, and this will be the biggest challenge of the future. And let me maybe add that the biggest challenge right now is crypto money. Bitcoin is crack cocaine of capitalism. Bitcoin is the most dangerous thing we have right now because it eats up energy without any actual thing being produced. It's just speculative money, and with every little step of rising of the price, more computers are beginning to produce calculating operations just to produce more of these non-fungible tokens.
That's quite a figure to think about it.
Yeah, well, Bitcoin now has the energy. Bitcoin now has the energy consumption of small countries like Costa Rica.
Wow.
Just by being there.
Incredible.
And it's not even used properly. Like imagine people would actually use it to buy stuff.
Mm.
Which technically would be a lovely thing to have a finance system based not on banks is a lovely dream, but Bitcoin is hell. Oh, Antonin, Bitcoin, interesting. Antonin, where's Antonin? Let's talk about that. Bitcoin has an end, but have you ever calculated after the last fork what is the energy needed with the last Bitcoin? Did you? Tell me.
Oh, sorry, no, I will speak. It's better, maybe.
Yeah, better, much better. Yeah.
I don't know the amount of energy. I know that it's tremendous amount of energy that Bitcoin farm is taking in terms of server, cooling system, and everything.
Yeah. But the challenge is the Bitcoin is a limited system. So with every fork, with every level, it gets more complicated for the minings. And the higher the price, the more computers compete against each other to create that hash, so to say. And with the last Bitcoin, technically, if you just calculate it, and this really gets me crazy, the amount of energy which would be needed for that is above what we're using now for all of the planet. It's like super crazy. So it's kind of a chicken race towards a wall, and nobody wants to jump off.
It's very interesting in terms of power, like governance stuff, but it's very, very hard to defend it in terms of impact on the energy consumption.
Yeah, as Ethereum is much better, but still crazy, but much better. And there are other coins, but yeah, let's not move into that.
Not really the subject.
Yeah, but it's so the what I wanted to kind of shed some light on is that digital is part of the solution, but it's not the solution by itself.
Yeah.
Wolfgang?
Is there any way that we can have something like a digital hygiene rules, like a rule, or is there any guidelines there to what is a good practice in terms of digital?
Some sectors are starting that. The big challenge right now, it's kind of an El Dorado situation because everything is just exploding. And nobody wants to say that Zoom is bad right now, because we need Zoom so dearly. We need all these conference systems, otherwise we wouldn't be able to meet at all. But there are initiatives on a European level trying to create a, I would say, a safe playing field. So say reaching out to the big providers, and interestingly, these are only 5. It's Google, Facebook, Amazon, and some two Asians. And they are dividing the market amongst them, all the servers, roughly speaking. And Google has just announced its roadmap to becoming net zero in the next, I think, 10 years or so. So Google has announced that. Announcing doesn't mean much in the business, but it is a start. So the sad answer is there's not much that you can do from an end consumer point of view. Like we can't switch here and say we want to use a less high pixel video and use a third of the energy, for example. Like, let's all lower our cameras. We don't have that button yet, but it might have something like that in the future. But as of now, the end consumer leverage towards reducing of the digital impact is very small, I would say. Christopher.
I'm not like a professional in this, and I don't know like a lot about it, but there's still like things, for example, you can have email addresses that try to go a sustainable way. There are like websites that offer like an email address that tries to minimize the emission. I don't know how much it actually does and how good it works, but there are these things that you can do like on a digital in a digital way to try to reduce your emissions.
Absolutely. There are providers exactly with email, but with the big video conferencing systems, this is this is why I'm saying this is a big question of scalability. I would say in the last year, tried 25 different video conferencing systems exactly for that reason, because we were looking for the most climate conscious provider, so to say. And the tough learning was the big ones are big because they're good, and the others are kind of sketchy, and you get thrown out, and the quality is, and then we said, okay, can we move to an open source thing from a cool university but it didn't work. That's
yeah, but on the other hand, isn't that something that we, I don't know, kind of need to accept until like but also for me, it's like, I know, for example, there is I'm using an email address that they don't have an app yet. You can't, like, every time you want to use it on your phone, you need to go on the website, log in. Like, it is more effort, but
exactly.
If we don't make that effort, they will not get better, because if there's no demand, like that's the society we live in. So we need to, like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like, yes, but the living sustainable is a little bit more difficult and needs a little bit more effort than the way we're living now. So I don't know, I mean, like, yes, I agree that the big companies, the big streaming services, they are the easy ones, they are the good ones, but they're only good because everyone is demanding them. So, like, I don't know, I'm a bit
no, Chris, don't get me, you're absolutely right. This is the daily choice you're doing is your biggest leverage as an end consumer, and gives you the most impactful experience, so to say. And this is definitely the way to go. I'm just I'm telling you a story, and you might relate to it or not. I started on WhatsApp Messenger. Now, in the last year, I have an account on Telegram, Signal, WeChat. I think I have 5 messengers now because somebody said, okay, they are green. And now I have a third of my friends on WhatsApp, others on Telegram. And I'm going crazy because I have to look on 5 messengers. I even use WeChat because somebody thought, okay, we might go to a Chinese because they can't read and lead. This is the most safe, cryptic. So, and right now, to be honest, I said, oh, come on, I just want one. But I have to be honest, I'm too lazy sometimes with that.
No, like, and that's, I don't know, I feel that's totally understandable, and it's like, I agree. But on the other hand, I also have the like the very optimistic hope that the more we use the alternative, the sustainable alternative, the better it's going to get. And yes, it might be a bit annoying for the next few years to use an email address where you need to specifically go on the website, log in every time you want to read your emails, instead of every time getting a push message on your, like a notification on your phone immediately. Yeah, but maybe that's the sacrifice you have to make for the next few years until these companies are big enough to be as good as, I don't know, but that, I don't know, that's just my opinion, and maybe it's a bit
no, it's absolutely right. I just put into the chat the Bitcoin thing. As of today, the electrical energy used by Bitcoin is comparable to the power consumption of the Netherlands, and Bitcoin has the footprint of Sweden.
Wow.
As of today, and it will rise in the next, so just that. But let's move to another.
Yes, I just wanted to step in quickly to say we are running out of time. If there are any burning questions, I see we'll take one person has the hand up, Claudius. Should we take one last question and finish there, Claudius?
Yeah, I'm very inspired by what you said, building bridges, and I would be interested if you have a good example in your experience of the past, like whereas a project where you saw that building bridges and it bloomed and lived off. And so I think it's very inspiring to hear maybe a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first story is coming from the world of festivals, the world I spend most of the time with the Green Music Initiative. A festival, and this can be a music festival or a theater festival or whatever kind of festival, basically is a social experiment, a temporary social experiment in which people infuse themselves with new ways of looking at it, with listening to music, seeing theater pieces, or getting entrenched in literature or arts, or so to say. This is a festival. And in the last year, more and more, the science community understood that the festival actually is a living lab. A festival is something where people are coming together to really experience something. So for the very first time, that very dry term of informal or experiential learning has become a reality. And there are some projects in Europe right now who are making use of that possibility, in which festival providers, cultural sector actors are coming together with the world of science, with an science topic to be a research, so to say. We are running 2 projects. One is, I'm going to put it in the chat, is called Green Europe Experience. This is about circular economy. And another project is starting right now as part of the Erasmus program. It's a project together with a university from Turkey, the Roskilde Festival in Denmark, and learning youth organization from Spain and us. And we are researching exactly that. How can festival create that informal learning experiences? And this is an interesting way of building bridges between two sectors which necessarily don't talk with each other. This is one thing. Another thing is that the culture sector is moving out of it. I have to put another way. Another thing is where the cultural sector is really moving out of is normal ways of doing things and reaching out to politics, and not only with learned issues. Usually culture would reach out to politics saying we need more funding for production, we need more funding for teaching. And right now, some networks are beginning to reach out to politics saying, okay, if you want us to play that role in the transformation, you need to support us in that, because only then we can support you. And all of a sudden, the question is a different one. It's not about, I need money for my peace, I need money for my house. It's like, okay, this is a more societal challenge. We're all in together. It's not about creating a piece or opening the stage for the topic itself. It's more about joining that societal transformation. And this you see, where you based, Claudius? What country?
I'm in Berlin. I'm part of Aurora Nova.
Ah, du kannst, okay. I can send you then some German stuff exactly, and I know it's happening all over Europe right now, definitely. Cool. But I can send you some.
Thanks.
Lovely, great, thank you so much. I think that's all the time we've got today. I wanted to say, Jakob, thank you so much for the presentation. Very, very inspiring. It's been a real pleasure. And thank you everybody for attending. If you are interested in more webinars, you have the link in the chat. Have a look, register for what's coming up next, and hope to see you next week.
Let me put the link of Aktionsnetzwerk. If you're interested in these activities, you can sign in. There's a newsletter, and you find everything there. Very much looking forward. Happy weekend. It's Friday. Great, huh? We made it.
Well, thank you so much.
The thing is, I can't leave, because if I leave, you're all gone, because I'm the host, right? So
actually, Jakob, you can all go. I'm the host again.
Oh, good, because I did that once, and I was just speaking and leaving, and then I killed the whole thing. So,
no, you didn't. We actually managed to survive.
Okay, good. So I'm off. Good. Happy weekend.
Thank you. Happy
Bye.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.